thoughts of a therapist here, and I hope you're looking after yourself. Welcome to the first ever episode of the TOAT podcast, where I'll be revealing what it's like to train as a counsellor in the UK. So a little bit about me. I have a diploma in integrative counselling and I work in private practice here in London. My diploma was accredited by the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. It's equivalent to a level 5. And what that means is that the diploma is equivalent to the second year of a bachelor's degree. And I also have a foundation certificate in counselling. So if you're interested in training to become a counsellor, listen up. Or if you're a client and want to peek behind the curtains of what your counsellor has been through to be there in the room with you, this is for you too. Everyone's welcome here. So let's get into it. So I signed up to do an integrative diploma in counselling, and I did that for part-time for 2 years, face-to-face. And for the diploma, I also had to join the BACP as a student member. So I've just double checked, and as of publishing this episode, it's £90 per year to join as a student member. I also then had to find a personal therapist. By the way, I'm going to interchange counsellor and therapist. I actually prefer saying therapist, and I don't know why. Anyway, I need to reflect on that because I don't know. But anyway, you'll hear me say counsellor and therapist. I mean the same thing here. So some training providers ask you to do 40 hours of personal therapy, but the training centre I was in asked us to do 80 hours of personal therapy across 2 years, and they were pretty strict on this. Some people did complain about this. It was just a lot. But to be honest, you do learn a lot by being in personal therapy, and I was very grateful to have been in long-term therapy because I'd never been in long-term therapy before. I'd only ever done short-term therapy myself, personally. And you learn a lot about yourself. Remember, you have to become super self-aware to be able to be a therapist. And being in personal therapy, you can also see how your own therapist brings their authentic self to the room and the modalities that they practice. And you can see how they apply skills and concepts in real time. So you learn a lot from them. It's super useful when you're training. And many kind therapists give students a discount because they understand how expensive training to be a therapist is. I had a full-time job to be able to afford to retrain, and I know that comes from quite a privileged position anyway. And this industry isn't as inclusive as it should be, and one of the barriers to entry is money. So I do understand that. Many of my peers on the diploma also had full-time jobs as well as studying. So I really appreciated that my therapist charged me £40 per session because we had to do 80 sessions over 2 years, and I've just done the maths, and that's £3,200 on top of the diploma fees, which were £9,000. And that is a lot of money. It's just so expensive. We were able to pay in instalments, so that helps a lot, paid monthly. And I know a lot of other people sacrificed a lot to study. Some lived paycheck to paycheck just to retrain. But again, obviously we could all afford it, which comes from a privileged position. But yeah, it's not as inclusive as it should be. And yeah, I have issues with that too. So the centre that I trained at did ask us to keep a personal development journal. However, we didn't need to submit this. This was never marked. It wasn't an assignment. And for me, it fell by the wayside after like a month of doing a journal. The course was demanding as it was and working full time and just, trying to get a bit of work-life balance in there. I just couldn't really keep up with writing a journal. But I do recommend writing one if you can. It comes in handy when you need to write your assignments or need to reflect on something, or just to look back to see how much you've grown over the years if you're in training. Another expense were counselling textbooks. We had to buy 2 core texts. One was The Therapeutic Relationship by Petruska Clarkson, as I call the Big Red Book, and she outlines the 5 relationship model in her book. And we also had to buy the Handbook of Individual Therapy by Dryden Reeves. Being an integrative course, this outlined different modalities and their key concepts. The Petruska Clarkson book I found so hard to read. I mean, it makes sense now when I look back at it, but the way it's written, it doesn't flow very well. So just a word of warning, it's quite a hard read. But let me know if you have a different opinion in the comments if you've read it. So we also had to have group course supervision, so supervision for the course as a whole, and that was included in the course fee. I was assigned a group of 4 and we met once every month for 2 hours. Here we discussed anything we were struggling with, so that could have been any theories or principles, concepts that we were struggling with, our general progress on the course, and when we were in our clinical placements we were able to discuss client work, and this group course supervision counted towards our supervision hours. So about months 3 or 4 into the course, so this was module 2, we were allowed to apply for our clinical placement. And as a part of the diploma, you have to complete 100 hours, and this is unpaid work mostly. Some people actually got paid in their placements, but it's very rare. So we have to, on top of that, work for 100 hours with clients to complete the diploma for free. Again, not making it very inclusive. For us, we could go down 2 routes. We could do the NHS short-term counselling, so that's 6 to 12 sessions, and that's a mixture of in-person therapy and online. And a note here, we had to do 51 face-to-face hours to pass, and the rest of our client hours could be online. Or we could go through private organisations and charities. A few of my peers went through bereavement charities and did their placement there. So one thing that I always have to check, even being qualified and in private practice at the moment, is the required ratio of supervised hours. This confused me so much as a student, and it still does, to be honest. So the BACP states that you need 1 hour of supervision for every 8 client hours and a minimum of 1.5 hours supervision per month. So that's 1 hour of supervision for every 8 client hours and a minimum of 1.5 hours supervision per month. So in the diploma, we weren't just set free to see clients, we had to have approval from our skills tutor and programme manager. And our skills tutor would observe us in our weekly lessons where we would have our triads. And if you're not familiar to counselling training, a triad is a group of 3 trainees. We sit in a circle and we all take on different roles and we swap the roles. So the roles would be therapist, client and observer, or helpee, helper and observer, because when you're training you don't call yourself a therapist or a counsellor just yet, you're a helpee and a helper. We practice counselling skills, now triads, so starting from the very basic stuff of active listening, attending, using silence, body language, into the more intermediate skills, for example, immediacy, challenging and working with risk. Now, I was a very anxious student and I was very anxious in my triads. It just felt really unnatural to me, and for a very long time I felt I wasn't good enough. But you have to start somewhere, and I persevered. I said to myself, look, you're not going to be good at this straight away. It's going to take time. So if you're listening and you feel like you're not good enough and you're going through counselling training, please keep going. And you may have heard your tutors say, because they said this to us so many times, trust the process. And I do agree with this. Even if you show up and you feel like you're not giving it your best in the lesson, you are still absorbing what's around you. You're listening, you're still learning. So you're just getting a bit better, bit by bit. And I do feel so much more confident now that saying that as a therapist, you have to be in constant, continual professional development, because there's just so much to learn, and us humans are always evolving and changing. So it's really important to keep learning and keep refreshing your skills. So once I completed all my observations and my skills tutor signed me off as ready to practice, I decided to go down the NHS route. This route brings you more diverse clients. You don't get a say in who you see, so you could be assigned a person of any age, any gender, any race, any religion, anyone, and I love that. With a variety of different problems as well, so it's not specific. So as I mentioned, my peers who went to a bereavement charity, obviously you know what kind of issues people are going to be coming to you with, or the main presenting issue, which would be grief and bereavement. But in the NHS, you worked with a whole range of issues. You wouldn't be assigned risky clients at first, but as you grew and you learned and you developed over the placement, you would get more and more clients that presented with risk. So on top of all of that, we had to achieve 80% attendance. That's for each module and for our supervision. We had to complete 5 written assignments across 2 years, one of which was a research project. This was intense. I used all my free times and my weekends and my evenings to write these assignments. And it took me like 5 hours to write one paragraph, and don't even get me started on remembering how to Harvard a reference again from back in my uni times. I just completely forgot how to do that, so that was annoying. I had to sacrifice basically my social life. I really wish I didn't have a full-time job during studying, but it happened. We got through it. 5 written assignments for that diploma specifically. I don't know what it's like in other training centres, but I can imagine it's pretty similar. So I'm going to leave it there. There's so much more to tell you though. I need to tell you about process group, what our lessons look like, what modalities we studied in our cohort. So I hope you're looking after yourself. Thank you for listening to this first ever episode of the TOAT podcast. Leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts on everything that I've just described, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.